All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 75 of Going Live with Good Soil. Myself and Matt Smith here, uh, doing our usual thing. We're live streaming on YouTube and on Twitter Spaces. Hopefully, the technology for that will become easier in time so that it's very simple for everyone to do. So when you have live streamers on YouTube, they can just easily click a button to have it live stream on their Twitter handle at the same time. I think that'll be really helpful once that occurs. Um, so Matt, yeah, how's it going this week? What's new with you?
Yeah, I mean the Tesla's down again. It's like the never-ending mantra of this whole year. So I'm very excited for 2022 to draw to a close and we can put this miserable year behind us.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's just been kind of crazy. On a personal level, my kids are deciding that they don't believe in sleep. So I've got the glasses on because I've had this like headache from being up since like 3:30 in the morning the last 3 nights. So if I'm a little off base, it's it's because
Okay.
I'm low on sleep and overly caffeinated, which doesn't even seem to help. It just makes me jittery.
Yeah. On a personal note, I have a golden retriever I'm babysitting that's resting in my office right now. So hopefully it doesn't disrupt our live stream. So, but yeah, I haven't had a dog in a long time, and it's exciting to babysit some grown dogs in preparation of getting a puppy maybe later in the year or something next year.
Is the cat gonna pick a fight with the dog? Do
Yeah,
you
we
have
have
an
two cats.
antagonizing cat?
Two cats, and they probably will not like it whatsoever. But I don't care. I really want a big dog. When I married my wife, she had a little 7-pound dog, and it was like, all right, well, I really wanted a big dog though. So now I'll finally get it. Anyway, let's move on. That's enough banter to start. Hopefully enough people have joined, and we can start talking real stuff. Macro market. That's what we kick things off with usually. Then we go into a lot of Tesla stuff to talk about. We can touch on Neuralink. That was a big presentation. Elon and his Twitter Spaces he's doing there, and some Q&A from the audience, questions submitted. So macro market, Jerome Powell, he had some comments on interest rate increases, the rate of increases slowing down. It seems like more of the same. The market rallied pretty strongly that day. I think my interpretation was that the market was going into that kind of hedging, afraid that he might double down and be more hawkish again, like he did during that Jackson Hole meeting. And because that didn't happen, he just kind of kept on message with what they last said in the last Fed meeting. That kind of, there was like an unwinding of those hedges that were like, all right, the market's not going to crash further. And so there was a nice up day covering those hedges maybe. And then since then, I think we've returned back down. We've given up everything we've gained as of today. I mean, NASDAQ is down another 1.5% or almost 2% last time I looked, and it was down like 2% almost yesterday, I think. So it's given back pretty much everything and more probably since his talk, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that it is more of the same. I mean, all the headlines that I saw were really focused on the rate of increases are going to decrease, but that's not even news. It's like, of course, you're not going to have 75 basis points every FOMC meeting like into next year, all throughout next year. So, excuse me. So I think his comments weren't necessarily news, although the market did, react positively. But to me, it kind of makes sense that it's given back those gains. But I don't know. We'll see. I think next week's going to be really, really big with the CPI print and the FOMC meeting. I mean, I'm not expecting any sort of surprise out of the FOMC meeting, but I think if we do get like a good kind of like very low CPI number for November, that could bode really well for markets going into the end of the year. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We've
What were you saying, Matt?
I was just going to say, that's what we can hope, but we've been off like all year on all of our expectations. So I've kind of given up trying to forecast what's going to happen with these markets.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the mercy of the Fed, what they decide to do, and whether the market capitulates further down. I know Peru is that, calling for doom and gloom. S&P getting down to 3,000. That's like a 25% drop from here further.
I saw
You
your
know, whether
exchange with him. That was pretty funny.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he gets his mind made up, and he doesn't think probabilistically. He changes his mind. He's a binary thinker that changes his mind given new data, and that's okay. But he doesn't really
Mhm.
think in a probabilistic way that you and I think about things. He's very
Yeah.
he thinks of things as either like 99% or no percent. Like I don't think he thinks totally binary, but he's I don't think he's able to think of things like 60-40 in that type of way.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to juggle things that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed that with a lot of people, like a lot of technical analysis too. It's like, oh, well, like the bottom is formed because of, XYZ, pattern that we've detected. So therefore, like now's the time to buy.
Yeah.
Like that's, I don't, first of all, I don't believe in technical analysis, but like, even if you
Yeah.
think that that could be one indicator, I think trying to think that you've actually cracked the code and understand how to like time the markets on all this stuff is just a little silly.
Yeah. Yeah. It is crazy. And he's like, I see Volcente in the comments saying the problem isn't that, him not changing his mind, it's that he's tweeting the same concept every 20 seconds. It's true. He's retweeting it multiple times a day to kind of, further try to bolster his case for the market crashing. And they may very well happen. I can't say for sure. I could see the market turning around and coming back as well. Um, so we'll find out. We're at the mercy of the Fed. If the Fed shows some kind of pivot coming sooner than the market expects, I think the macro market recovers, and if not, we're sort of in uncharted territory in some ways. The market looks out 6 to 9 months, or maybe even further, and so you have to kind of decide, okay, when is the Fed going to pivot? 9 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and when is the market going to recognize that and start pricing the pivot in more, so there's a lot. I think I was thinking about it, and of all the data, the CPI is like this big number we all watch, right? But I think if there's a way to strip out the owner's equivalent rent, the OER, from the
Yeah.
CPI, which is like 40%, if you could strip that out and then have a 4-month rolling average of the CPI after that's been stripped out, I feel like that would be like a very accurate measure of where we are with inflation. So I don't know. Is there anyone in the comments or anywhere could figure that out? It'd be cool to kind of see what that number is and how it changes over time, because I feel like that would be ideal way to measure what actual inflation is. What do you think about that idea, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely do that. It definitely has an outsized impact on it. And this was one of the interesting comments from Jerome Powell last week. Was he actually kind of acknowledged the fact that they've got this delayed data source information coming in. So obviously they missed the inflation spike coming up with this time last year. Everyone was talking about inflation is transitory. Well, they were clearly wrong about that because they were looking at lagging data when Elon saw real-time information coming out of his supply chain. He's like, hey, inflation is going to be a problem, and nobody listened to him. And now he's saying, hey, inflation's not so much a problem anymore. It's actually coming down. The bigger issue is that we're raising rates into a recession. And so I think if you were to do that, you would get something that's a lot more like, I think that was kind of the idea with core CPIs. Like let's like get rid of a lot of like the noise around energy, and I think there's some of the piece that's pulled out of there. But if you were to, I think you could probably even adjust it even further than beyond what you said. I'd have to do some thinking about how to do it, but to make it like more forward looking, or at least kind of less time lagged.
Yeah.
Now it would be like a lot of noise because there'd be a lot of jumping around. But I would have to imagine that if using some sort of kind of forward looking, like, I don't know what it would be. Some sort of metrics, though, would be a much better way to do it than this kind of smooth, 12-month rolling average kind of OER, piece of the that makes up such a huge piece of the CPI.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this recent wage report came out last week, right? What that kind of showed the market, or there's like wage inflation and the jobs market's looking good, and so good news is bad news kind of thing. Is that sort of what happens here, you think?
Yeah. So the job growth was, a lot stronger than people were expecting. And I think one of the surprises from it though is that I think the average work week actually decreased. So it seems like employers are really adding a lot more employees, but they're actually having trouble filling enough jobs. So like the people that they do have are actually having to work, or they're not working as many hours as they used to. So the economy is showing some signs of strength, despite, I think, excuse me, people feeling very pessimistic about the economy right now. The kind of week to week, month to month data does show that the economy is in relatively strong position. So I'll be kind of curious to see what impact we're seeing from these rate hikes 3-6 months from now, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kathy Wood had a really good in the know discussion as usual. Every couple weeks, I think she puts one out on their YouTube channel. I listen to it, and she talked about like the wage inflation number. While that's a little higher than expected, it was the first time she can recall that the actual number of hours worked went down by like 0.1% or something, instead of staying the same or going up like. So it sort of offsets some of the wage inflation. She was saying that if your wage is percentage wise is getting higher, but your hours of work is going down, there's like some kind of offset. So it makes sense, I guess. The workers are getting paid the same amount of money, but they're being more efficient with the time they're using, or something, I guess, is the formula you could say. So that's why it seems like there's inflation, but really there's just less effort to get the same production or something. So
Yeah.
maybe that discounts some of the wage inflation, but I don't think the Fed goes into that granular detail. I doubt it. It's just a
No.
detail that she caught and she mentioned on her.
Yeah, I mean that's been kind of the secret sauce for the U.S. economy for such a long time. Wage growth has gone up, but like the overarching trend for like GDP per capita increasing has been that efficiency has increased so dramatically. So we've been on the forefront of technology for the last 50 years plus, and that's really accelerated with the advent of the internet and computation. And I'd be kind of curious to get into like ChatGPT if you want to, and some of the other kind of AI advances that are coming out. I don't think that's impacting the kind of current economic reports that we're seeing with efficiency, but I do think that's like something that can really save the economy in like the medium to long term. I really believe latter half of this decade, like the kind of efficiency in terms of worker efficiency and GDP per capita, I really think that's going to continue to tick up just as we get more and more utility. Real
This
world
chat
utility.
GPT is a big step forward. Yeah, I think there is going to be a lot of efficiencies, a lot of old jobs will become obsolete with this chat GPT. I mean, people can use it to like set up executive board meetings, like write me an outline for an executive board meeting. Instead of a secretary, this thing does it in
Hmm.
1 second. You don't have to pay a secretary. There's so many use cases for this. I've seen people posting their examples on Twitter and all over the place. I unfortunately went into the chat GPT website like right away with my Dolly 2 thing, but I couldn't figure out how to like get to the playground and figure it out. I just saw
Oh,
user
you
guides
couldn't?
and manuals and guides and manuals of all different things. And I was like, how do I just type into the Chat GPT 3 and get my answers like everyone else is doing? I couldn't figure it out. I don't know. I'm a dummy. I spent like 5 or 10 minutes fiddling around with it. So all the time I had to kind of play with a new toy or try to figure out a new toy like that. And then I had to move on to family stuff and other things, but I haven't gone back to it. I need to get back to it and spend another 5 or 10 minutes
Uh,
trying to figure out the interface. I'm a little frustrated that OpenAI has a terrible, what I feel like is a terrible interface. It could be for such a cool toy. They should just make it so simple for you to just
yeah,
go in and use it without having to go through these different pages and figure out what
yeah.
playground means and what these other things mean. And I don't know. That's my complaint. Yeah. I'm going to say
It's like
ChatGPT,
interactive
a
brokers
user
then.
interface that's simple to use for OpenAI. That's what I'm going to say when I get there.
Oh, so I was playing around with it a little bit. I can show you later, but I was playing around with it last night, and a lot of the prompts, it would say like the same like pat answer of like, oh, I can't answer that question because I was trained on like blah blah blah, and it would like this whole
Uh,
thing. But then at the end of this paragraph, it would actually have like useful information, and I was like, get rid of like I
the
understand how you were
disclosure.
trained. I understand
Yeah.
the disclosure. Just like make it like easier to delineate between like the actual useful
Yeah.
information.
It's the
So, but
first
it's really
iteration that
impressive.
they're coming out with. It's sort of like the you remember the Blake Lemoine, anything he did. What was the name of that one again? I can't remember, that he posted the dialogue on. Remember the guy from Google that sounded the whistleblower alarm with the Washington Post? Blake Lemoine, he went all over the media talking about it. Everyone was like, "Whoa, this is crazy." It was the Google chatbot.
Was
So sort
was he the one who thought it was sentient and he was going to become
yeah.
like a priest of the AI?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, if
yeah.
you read his whole dialogue with the chatbot, it seemed pretty crazy and incredulous. It like made me think like maybe this chatbot, I don't really know if it's sentient or not. I can't tell from it
I
looks
did
kind of
not I was not convinced by that. I did read
You read
the
the
whole
whole thing?
detailed thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's doing a good job of like mimicking answers, but it didn't seem to have like broader context and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it was impressive for
It was
sure, and
impressive.
I could understand how you could be convinced, but to me,
Yeah. I
it
wasn't convinced. I was just, like, open-ended, like, I'm not sure either way, I was like, "This is a
yeah,
little odd." So, this I feel like ChatGPT is like a like a dumbed down version of that or a poor man's version of
yeah.
that. I mean, that's like this like the new next version of what ChatGPT 3 comes, and it's gonna turn into, like if once they can make the text turn into speech, we're gonna have, like, that movie Her. Did you ever see that movie? I've been talking about that movie
I
a lot.
did see that. Yeah, yeah,
You did, okay.
yeah,
That's gonna come to life, I think. You'll have that ChatGPT, in your phone, and it'll talk to you, or, you can text with it or whatever, but it'll, like, be your friend and it'll answer all your questions. Like, it's sorta like what Siri should have been. Siri is, like, so
oh my
disastrous.
gosh, Siri's so bad. Yeah,
It's like, "Siri, tell me this," and it's like, "Well, I'll Google the page for you, and then you can click on this link and look it up yourself." Like, it's, like, annoying.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. I think so. It stopped training in sometime in 2021. It's kind of like went static off of the data set at that point. But I could imagine a future where they just kind of iterate this, keep it connected to the internet. So like I was asking it about like the World Cup, and it's like I can't do current events, obviously.
yeah. Yeah.
But if it can do like current events, and on top of that, continue to train itself based on like what's been happening this year, this past week, and like following developments. Like it seems like there's a path, and I'm not an AI training expert, but it seems like that
Yeah.
would be like a path to really like really ridiculously transform this could be. And I saw somebody, I forget who it was, posted about like how like Bing could use this to like if they just bought this out, if Microsoft bought this out and like
Yeah.
used it to
I saw something
like
about that.
have something that was much better than like Google search. Cause like if you actually could do real-time stuff and phrase it in the way that you can with this chatbot, that's way better than a Google search. Like Google
Mhm.
search is amazing and like it's kind of untouchable for like search algorithms and like listing web pages in order of relevance. But Chat GPT has the potential to like actually get you the direct answer that you want instead of just like a bunch of links.
Yeah.
So
I mean, get you the answer that you think you want, but I see
yeah,
Andrew Bazile in the YouTube comments makes a good point. He says ChatGPT's GPT is impressive, but he has concerns about the quality of the
yeah,
training set because he argued with the ChatGPT about the relative efficiency of hydrogen fuel cells, and it
hmm
seemed to just be parroting propaganda. And that's like
yeah.
that's
That's a real
troublesome.
concern. That's
Because
a
people
real
are gonna
concern.
start assuming that it's like ChatGPT knows the answers, and they're gonna assume that you're just gonna assume it's the truth, what it's telling you,
Yeah,
when it seems so confident on something you're not sure of, and then you're gonna start believing these kind of like propaganda answers.
But
And I saw another guy tweet out a thread about how he did these like tests of political where the chat GPT fits on the political spectrum. These scientific tests or political science tests they can give people, and like verbal tests to decide which quadrant. And this chat GPT is like super liberal, left leaning,
mhm,
and so like it's just taking the training set of all the media out there, which is people that work in the media tend to be more liberal and left leaning, whereas like engineers, math people don't work in the media, and those people are more conservative often, not always, but often. But the media journalistic people, the mind is more like artsy and liberal leaning,
yeah,
so there's just been studies done on this. I'm not just generalizing, there's studies done on this. So because this set of data of all the journalism put out there is going to be left leaning, then this chat GPT is going to have just like a left leaning mindset
yeah.
too.
No, it's a really good point because I think like it has the potential to really dumb down society too. Like, I mean, imagine if people just stopped doing research and critical thinking on their own, and it's kind of like Wikipedia on steroids. I think it has the potential to be where like people don't really think about things; they just like look at the Wikipedia page for like whatever, and that's just like there were all sorts of students slightly after my time who would just like go and basically like copy a Wikipedia article for any like
Yeah.
papers they needed to write in college. And that like ChatGPT has the potential to like really make that type of work a lot more easy to do. But I'm very concerned at a societal level that we're not learning how to critical think anymore. And I think if
Yeah.
we outsource our critical thinking to AIs like this that are not challenged,
Yeah.
yeah, you could just say, oh, okay, well, like I checked with Chat GPT and it looks like hydrogen fuel cells like aren't going to work. So let's not focus on building out like an electric semi. here
Yeah.
at Tesla, because that probably won't work. Like
Yeah.
no, you need like people to really think originally, and I think that
Yeah.
that skill set's going to become more and more valuable, even though this is going to be a net positive, I
Yeah.
think, for the economy and society.
And am I misremembering this, or did someone at Twitter or did Elon say that they maybe Elon responded to Sam or something saying that he doesn't want OpenAI to use any of the Twitter data or something like that
Yeah,
for its
he cut off that feed. I think he noticed that they were training on like a stream of tweets or something like that.
yeah.
I forget exactly what what he said about it. He had some sort of comment about like the mean time to like becoming racist or like Hitler or something like that is like
Yeah.
a good test for AI. Like there was that Microsoft AI a while
He's
ago
thinking
that just
ahead.
like
You know what I think he's thinking about this? The Twitter data. He now owns the Twitter data.
mhm,
It's a
that's
huge amount. It's a
valuable.
huge data set of text
Mhm.
conversations. You're like, it's very
That's
valuable, like you said.
that's a
And
gold mine for AI
gold mine.
trading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gold mine for AI training. And he's going to get better at prioritizing the data with this community notes feature, right? Which is going to sort of like put fact versus fiction on things, a lot of things, right? And so I think he's thinking forward, and he is knows that this Chat GPT is the future. I mean, we all sort of know that. It's been detailed in movies, and he'll have his own version, the Twitter GPT or whatever you call it. He'll call it something else, X chatbot or whatever, and he'll have his own version that I think will be exclusively trained on the Twitter data set that he's grooming right now. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Or it could be a monetizable stream. Like maybe he's okay, allowing OpenAI to have access, but like
Mhm.
pay us a fee of I don't know, like a cent per every 10,000 tweets or something like that you train on. I don't know what it would be, but like I think he had this point that OpenAI used to be open source and nonprofit, and none of those things are true anymore. And so I think he's
Yeah,
just rightly, we've known for a long time he's been really concerned
yeah,
about AI, and so I think
yeah.
it's he's
I could see him open sourcing it and on Twitter and making it free for all Twitter users, even the people that
or
aren't,
mhm.
verified. Maybe just verified people, but then it's like violating that kind of idea. I think he still wants to hold up that principle of making it open source and free for everyone who wants it. So I think he'd make it available for anyone who's in the Twitter platform. So part of the benefit of going in the Twitter platform is you get to chat with the Twitter chatbot, which will be the best chatbot out there. Like there's going to be competitors, all kinds of competitors with different data sets being trained. This is the first kind of one open to the public right now. But he even asked a question, I think, or someone asked like, how much does it cost? And I think Sam Altman responded like a couple pennies or something. So I think he's already in his
He's
mind
thinking there,
coming
yeah.
up with plans to have the best chatbot because this is the future, and it's going to be exclusively in the Twitter platform. That's my prediction, and that's
I
probably
like it.
2 to 3 years away at the most. Is the first iteration of that. I think there's probably already like a dark project. George Hotz is probably leading this project potentially. Given his experience, and so there's probably already
Yeah.
like a dark project, whatever they call that, in the Twitter back room, like working on this, and I could see that coming out in a year or two, maybe the first iteration or the news coming out. It's going to be exciting to use Twitter with that special bot that's probably going to be 10 times better than the OpenAI one,
There's,
but it'll
there's
be cool.
some sort of Twitter skunk works is going on
Yes.
there, you think, or the
Twitter skunk
yeah.
works. Yeah. I mean, definitely.
Uh,
I'm putting the odds very high on this.
So
So
I see my brother-in-law's in the comments, Jordan, who helped with the thumbnail. Great work on that, by the way, Jordan. So
yeah,
he
thank
works
you,
with
Jordan.
students at in undergrad students at a library, and he's saying students are for sure missing critical thinking skills. And that's like
Mm,
I think that was probably a trend when you were in undergrad. I definitely noticed it when I was there, but it seems like it's only accelerated. Like so many people, we kind of saw this with Twitter, where like critical thinking and actual work was not rewarded. It was like being part of this woke ideology is like how
yeah.
you get ahead. The All In podcast was talking a lot about this. I think it was 2 episodes ago. So I think that's like a skill set that's going to be always at a super premium.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's this going to do to homework? Like I was thinking about it with my kids. My oldest kid is 10. He's on the verge of having to do like book reports and all kinds of stuff. And ChatGPT solves that. Like he's never going to have to do these
It's
homeworks at home. What I think is going to have to happen is
uh,
teachers are going to have to recognize this, which they will, and the homework, they're gonna have to say like, okay, all this work we give you to do at home is practice. You're not being graded on it, but we want you to practice at home doing this because now we're gonna grade you only exclusively in the classroom where we know you're not using the chat GPT to do your
Yeah.
answer. We'll give you a miniature article. You have to read it in an hour or a half hour and write a report on the fly right there in an hour. So they'll do in order to
Yeah.
actually accurately grade people, you're gonna have to just do
Yeah.
it in class, I think, in the future.
I agree. Like maybe you need to actually put kids in a Faraday cage where they can't be connected to the internet. And
Yeah,
like, can you write a report? Because like that
yeah,
was, I remember as like a high school student, how agonizing that process was to like have an intro, to have like
yep,
3 body paragraphs,
yeah,
to have like a thesis and then like a
yeah.
conclusion, and it all tied together into like a coherent argument. It took me so long to like go through that
Yeah,
process.
there's no other way. I mean, if anyone in the
No.
Twitter and anyone in the YouTube comments thinks of another way, I can't. I was thinking about it a lot because it was bothering me, like how the homework's gonna be so different forever. Like reports at home, there's just gonna be no grading on reports being done at home. It's gonna be have to be pushed out as like, all right, this is your practice for the actual grade you're gonna get graded on when you do it in class. And if you don't do the practice
Mhm.
version, you're gonna be at a disadvantage when you try to do it in the classroom, and when that's what you're graded on exclusively or something. So does anyone see another way for actual grading to happen? Like if we're going to keep a traditional model of performance, measuring students with great capabilities like that, how else can you grade them if you can't trust them to be on their own to do the work without the chat GTP 3, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of another way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a little bit like old man yelling at the cloud, I feel,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
I do kind of, it's kind of an unprecedented social experiment we're running. Like on the
Yeah.
one hand, these tools are obviously incredibly valuable, but on the other hand, like we need the kids to understand like how to think in the first place, and then use these as like an aid. I think, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
So speaking of classrooms, we can transition to the Tesla Semi event that I went to. You actually were in class with what's his name? The guy who presented
Dan
with
Priestley.
Dan
Yeah.
Priestley. And my understanding, I talked to the other Tesla engineers, and they said that Dan Priestley is in charge of the Tesla Semi program,
Yeah,
which
he
is
has
pretty
been
crazy.
for a couple of years. I think I was
Yeah.
never particularly close with him, but I think like I even went to middle school with him. I think
Wow.
he's like just this guy I knew all grown up, and we were never particularly close or anything. But I had a bunch of classes with him, and it was just like random that all of a sudden he's like leading Tesla Semi. So not random. I mean, he's obviously incredibly smart, very capable. But yeah, just a random thing that I went to high school with with the lead of the Tesla Semi project.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's such a small world. And you said he was like super smart and like hit the books hard, and you were like, this guy's too smart for me kind of thing or something.
Yeah, well, I was just an idiot in high school. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really care about my grades or anything like that. I
Yeah.
kind of realized I needed to in college, but I was just kind of like a goofball. And he was
He was
like
hardcore.
super smart, hardcore. He was on like the swim team, like took it very seriously.
Mm.
So he's just like my impression looking back on him was just like he was really driven. And I remember just being surprised. Like, so in Michigan, where I was, like pretty much everybody went to the state schools. A couple people would go to like Chicago, and
Mhm.
he went to Stanford. And I was like, oh, who's this big shot going to Stanford? Like, you think
Yeah.
you're so smart? Like, but like, no, he just like, he was that smart, and
Yeah.
good for him to be doing that. So yeah, no, I'm just, it's just so cool that he's actually doing that.
That is cool. Yeah, he did a great job presenting. He clearly
Hmm.
understands the product, designing it. And I think one little Easter egg that came out of the presentation was that the Cybertrucks are going to will have the capability to charge at that same speed as the semi truck. I mean, what are your estimates? I mean, given your energy knowledge and everything, what are your estimates? Like a Cybertruck could be close to empty. How much time do you think it could be close to full if it has like 80 or 100 kilowatt, let's say
So
120 kilowatt battery pack or something?
I mean, the kind of theoretical math, at 100 kilowatt hour pack, if you're charging at 1 megawatt, you just divide the 100 kilowatt hours by 1 megawatt, and you get 6 minutes.
Wow,
But
6 minutes. Oh my gosh,
zero
that's
zero.
crazy.
But obviously, that's not going to be
Not
the real
filling gas
time,
station.
because in the real world, like there's the whole charging curve, and it's not
Yeah,
it's not going to be like you get that peak rate for, I don't know, 30% of the charging curve or something like that. So maybe the actual number is more like 15,
10,
20 minutes. But then maybe the 10 to 60% charge is in 6
like
minutes or
5
something like
minutes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's still
So
great. 10 to
it's
60% is pretty crazy. Yeah,
but I
that's
don't
yeah.
that I also don't know that if I believe that they're going to do that. And there's probably two main reasons why I'm skeptical. One is just that like I don't know that the cells can actually handle that charge rate. Like a 1 megawatt, putting that into a small pack, like that's a huge amount of output. So
Yeah.
like I trust Tesla that they've figured this out, and you could probably like I would imagine if they designed the pack such that it splits into like 4 different sections that can each charge at 250 kilowatts. So there's probably some way they could do that.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but the bigger potential issue in my mind, and maybe it's not if they adjust throughput enough, but um, utility rates have what's called a capacity charge, and
mhm.
so if you're drawing a megawatt instead of 250 kilowatts, you actually have to pay a lot more just for that standby service charge
Mhm,
on your electricity, and like potentially a lot more.
mhm.
So it would actually increase the charging cost for Tesla, at least if they're paying utility rates, by a bit. But that, like I was trying to say, that could be offset somewhat if you're able to just use like half the number of stalls that you otherwise might. So maybe your actual total kind of like site-wide capacity charge wouldn't change too much. So there's a lot of different like nuances about it, but it's yeah, there are some potential downsides. I think if they were to actually try to draw a whole megawatt, which is just crazy. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, yeah, that's nuts. So we'll get more information in time. I mean, the Cybertruck, I speculate the Cybertruck first deliveries will be in, May, June, or July. June is my guesstimate if I have to
Of next
guess
year.
when. June, yeah, they'll be the
So
first deliveries. That's my guesstimate.
I did hear from a source who wishes to remain anonymous that Tesla just announced it, or not announced, but pushed their suppliers to back about 4 months
Hmm.
on the launch of
Cybertruck.
that project, the Project Everest, I think they're calling it. Um, but I think they were initially targeting like mid next year. So
Okay.
my sense is it's going to be late next year, which I think is actually consistent with what they've said publicly.
Yeah.
First deliveries by late 23. So to me, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe they get
Do
some
you
like in
think that
November or
they could
something like
still
that.
do their first deliveries in June, but the suppliers, the ramp up, they're just pushing back 4 months? Like, I mean, all they need is deliver like 100 in June or 10 in June,
Yeah,
100 in July. Instead of ramping up quickly, they're planning to ramp up slower, and that's why they push the suppliers back 4 months, do you think? Or do you think that's possible?
it it's possible. Yeah, I mean, I don't have enough information to know like what the bottlenecks are, and I mean if
Yeah.
there's some like major reason why they can't do any um, deliveries, then yeah, maybe uh, first deliveries would be this time next year. But I mean, I think it's going to follow a similar kind of S curve
Yeah.
that the other products and factories have seen. Maybe slightly slower even because it's such a new technology.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think that for purposes of like Tesla's financials, I think it's going to be pretty minimal deliveries next year, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. So, China, the next thing I guess is we want to talk
Hey,
about is the
sorry,
China.
but before we move on to that, I'm curious. Like, having actually been at the event in person, was there anything that kind of came across while you were there or at the event that maybe those of us who were watching online didn't see, or any interesting takeaways or anecdotes you had?
Yeah, interesting takeaway in terms of economics for modeling Tesla's revenues from semi, I guess, going forward is that they don't have a definitive pricing for the semi truck. Like they don't have a transparent
Mm-hmm.
pricing for their customers at this time. It seems to be
Hmm.
um, that it will be based on customer, like maybe fleet sales. Like if they sell 1,000 of these semi trucks to some PepsiCo versus 20 of them to Walmart or whatever. Like the bigger the sale, the lower the average price, kind of thing. It seems like they're going to go that route with pricing the semi trucks. That's my feel. That's from talking to some people there. That's sort of what I inferred. Um, so that's interesting to keep in mind for if and when we try to model out the average price and the customers that are going to first and so forth. And the
It's
other, yep.
I was just gonna say it's gonna be interesting, even on like the production and delivery report that we see next month. Like, are they gonna have a semi line? Like, I
Yeah.
think they probably will.
Yeah, yeah, they probably will. That's true. Or they might say they might wait until the next quarter and just say it was like, not enough to
Yeah.
mention something. The other thing I gathered is the share buyback. I asked about that to some people, and everyone's tight-lipped. But I asked like questions, I started trying to get like answers, you know, or non-answers to give me information, basically, and
Hmm.
so what I gathered or what I inferred is that Elon is totally okay with totally a green light for the share buyback, but that the board has not given it the green light yet, and over 50% of the board has to green light it. That's what I inferred, and that not like majority, not like a super majority or something, just over half the board, and that perhaps the reason is that institutional investors there's kind of a contingent of institutional investors pushing back against the share buyback, in the ears of some of the board, probably saying like, this is crazy. Don't do a share back. About to have a global recession. We need all the capital we can get." That kind of discussion. So,
Hmm.
there are some institutional investors, trying to hold Tesla back from doing a share buyback, which is, I think, causing the board to hesitate. So that's what I gathered. Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
It's yeah, and I saw the picture of you went with your friend Andrew, and he was actually literally kicking the tires. I thought it was so cool they like didn't have it roped off, like they actually let you go up and see the semi. That was
Yeah, yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, that semi was being shown, before Elon went on stage. There was, like, a long line of, like, 50 plus people by the time we got to that part of this tour, and, we waited in that line for a while, but only, like, you know, they were only, like, each person that they were going to show it to, they only showed, like, one person at a time, and the person would take, like, anywhere from, like, 30 seconds to, like, 5 minutes or something.
Oh,
Some of them
geez.
like look at everything and take, like, one guy or a couple guys were taking pictures and put it on Twitter. You're not supposed to do that, but I guess they overlooked it there or whatever. But yeah, I mean, people were taking a long time to look at it. So the line only moved up very marginally in like 15 or 20 minutes of waiting there. So we just decided, because Elon was going to be speaking in 20 minutes. So we decided just to go up to the stage and kind of get a good
Yeah.
spot to watch Elon. And I don't know if you noticed, but on the live stream, if I showed my wife this part, but if you go to the live stream, anyone who's like really curious, you go to the live stream of the recorded live stream of the Elon thing. I'm in the front right corner of the stage, like against the fence or whatever. But right when it starts, right when it changes camera angle, right when everyone quiets down, I say, "Looking good, Elon," like really loud, and you can hear that. And he stops and looks at me, and then he goes to start the presentation. Like he looked at me for an instant before he started his presentation. You can hear me say that very in the background, and he looks, because I'm trying to like
That's
encourage
funny.
him, give him positive feedback for being healthy, because he was looking pretty good.
Yeah,
I felt so. It was cool that I got one shout out that he kind of heard.
that's
Yeah.
nice. Don't doubt your vibe, Elon.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was funny.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. I mean, there was lots of things. He was behind the scenes there, shaking hands with JB Strawball, and JB
That was
Strawball
a
was there.
great picture of him with JB and Franz.
Yeah. The
It
three of
was
them
cool
were
seeing them
talking.
all together.
Yeah, and then Elon came out and shook hands to everyone in the crowd at one point, which I was like, I don't know, it's a little dangerous. Security people were all like nervous watching, like what's going on, you know? And
Yeah,
he shook probably like 50 or 100 people's hands. I was like down the line. He didn't make it to me, but I don't know. I would have just shook his hand and be like, I don't know what I would even I don't know if I'd say anything and be like, don't doubt your vibe, or I don't know what I'd say. Try to say something, but yeah, it was cool. Like, this is the guy who's like, he's the wealthiest person on earth, like, but that's not why he's so influential, so important. He's like the most important person in terms of the future of humanity. And you're like
yeah,
this close to him. You're like as close as, like, it was pretty cool. Just any chance I get to be in the proximity of Elon, it's pretty historic in my mind. It's like, you
yeah.
know, so it was cool. Yeah, I had a good time.
Well, should we talk
Yeah,
China numbers a little
yeah,
bit? I
talk
know
China.
we're
Yeah,
so yeah. There's been rumors of this production cut. I think Rob Maurer first talked about it on Friday. The rumor that the Shanghai plant was going to cut production by about 20%. Tesla China came out and said that the rumors were false, but like I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. Like they could just say, well, we're going to cut by 15%, not 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's just no legitimacy at all to the rumors. So I don't know. What's your thought after having seen this play out for the last couple of days?
Well, there's already some reports that Tesla's preparing a Model 3 revamp. That's already
Hmm.
like clear. Like I forget what it's
Yeah.
called, Project Highland or something like that. I don't know, but that's clear that they're going to revamp the Model 3. And there's reports now that they're preparing the Fremont factory already for this kind of revamp, right? And so,
Hmm.
would they prepare? Is it possible that production is going to be down for the Model 3 for a couple weeks while they prepare it for a revamp for in the second half of
Yeah.
December? Is that possible? That seems entirely
Which
possible. Yeah.
And but this is where like I kind of have a little bit of sympathy with Gary Black's kind of call for PR here, because like there's like let's just say for argument's sake that they're going to be down for 2 weeks in December or something like that, or that production is going to be down in December 20% relative to what it would be in
Yeah.
November. Well, if that's because of demand, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Potentially pretty big issue. But if that's because they are installing new manufacturing equipment that's going to allow for like single piece casting on the Model 3, which will enable kind of improved margins going forward, or at least lower cost of goods sold going forward, that's great news. And
Yeah.
so the fact that we don't know kind of which side of the debate that the truth lies is just a little bit frustrating as investors. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see, just going back to the Dan Priestley thing, he apparently, Jay Ryan in the YouTube comments is saying Dan Priestley was swimming All-American at Stanford, and he also played defensive end at Stanford as a football walk-on. That's incredible. Wow.
Jeez.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, to me, that speaks strongly of his discipline. If you can
Yeah.
physically discipline yourself, then mentally you have some pretty hardcore discipline too, I would imagine. So anyway, that was just a little interesting YouTube comment. But the China numbers, sorry to sidetrack that. I just saw that. I wanted to mention that as we were talking about them earlier. Yeah, the demand is the thing, right? I mean, that's what everyone's kind of worried about. Where are we on the demand curve? And China's in a huge recession at the moment, or it feels like they're in a big recession, not a depression, but like a very big recession, it seems like, because of their zero COVID lockdowns in particular, as well as inflation.
Yeah.
So you combine that, but on the flip side, for many years, Elon was always asked about demand with the Model S and even the Model X and the early Model 3 ramp up and the early Model Y. And he's always been asked about it repeatedly on earnings calls or interviews, and it's always a fear, and it's never come to fruition. Like, as like and he's mentioned in the past, like, if we ever hit demand problems, there's a bunch of levers we can pull. So he's got a lot of
Hmm.
levers he can pull. They've pulled a couple of them. You can see, right? They lowered the price. They offered some insurance. It seems like some insurance, incentive. They've reintroduced some element of the referral program. So you can see them pulling different levers, and you'd think that they have more levers, such as advertising.
Hmm.
So there's lots of levers they can pull to increase demand when they feel like they need to, in my mind. So I'm not as worried about the demand as other people are.
Yeah. I do. So just as you were talking, I looked up this website, ev-cpo.com. It's basically like this algorithm that scrubs all the Tesla listings of available used and new vehicles worldwide. And right now it's showing that they've got like 1,000 new Model Ys and 1,200 new Model 3s available. That is definitely a lot higher than I've ever seen before. So
Hmm.
to me, that's anecdotal evidence that I don't know that they necessarily have a demand problem, but it seems pretty clear to me that they don't have this kind of crazy record demand
Imbalance.
imbalance that they had 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Um,
And in the US, you can also understand it because the Inflation Reduction Act is coming. And I think a lot of buyers or potential buyers, are, if they're knowledgeable, are holding off until that kicks in. right after the new year.
Yeah. And it looks, just in looking at these at a high level, it looks like there's more of them, or it's like roughly even between the US and Europe for the Model Y, but there's 774 new Model 3s in America and only 369 in Europe. So it very well could be the case that you've got a little bit lower demand in the United States right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, like, that's definitely temporary. Like, so let's just assume worst case scenario, they build up like, I don't know, 30,000 units of inventory in Q4 in the United States. Well, they'll just sell that, in Q1
Yeah, first
with
week
the
or two
tax
of
credit.
Q1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I don't think that's that big of a deal.
yeah, I don't
But
think so either.
it could be it could hurt the stock price though, because then you'll have to wait like
Yeah.
until April or whatever for the
If they
financials to
show
come through.
yeah, if they show in the P&D report, like, production of 470,000 and sales of 420,000, that's
Oh
gonna
yeah,
hurt the stock price big time,
for
right?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
People will, because I mean, that was already a little bit of weakness in the Q3, and like that narrative really caught fire that, oh, there's demand issues. And um, so yeah, I think if you have another quarter where there's that huge imbalance, which I think production will be higher than deliveries in Q4. I'm definitely expecting that. But if it's like 50,000 units, then yeah, I think that'll definitely add,
Yeah.
fuel
'Cause
to
you
the
add
demand
that
spike.
you're adding that on to the previous quarter, which was what, 30,000 difference or something like that? I forget, but it was a difference. So you're adding there. So now you have over 2 quarters, you know,
Yeah.
the added differences there. So it just adds to that narrative that Tesla can't sell all the cars they're making anymore. So
Which is kind of hilarious, because if you look at their day sales outstanding, like the financial metric to track inventory, it's like, oh, their inventory has gone up 30% or something like that. Okay, well, they're still about 15% of what the industry average is. Like,
yeah,
GM's got an entire quarter's worth of cars out there on lots, and like nobody
yeah,
bats an eye at that. It's so
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I remember back when they were producing like 20 or 25,000 Model S's a quarter, they'd be like, "Oh, we produced 23,000 Model S's and sold 20,000 of them." And the street wouldn't give them a hard time for the 15% that weren't sold. But now 15% of the production not sold is like a big freaking deal for some reason. It's like, yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
frustrating in some ways because that's just sort of the norm, for it should be the norm really, and shouldn't be an exception. It should be. So we've somehow been trained to think that Tesla production and delivery should match very closely every quarter because Tesla got so good for so
Yeah.
long doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, let's go on. I mean, we were going to touch on some other things, but we're running low on time. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we're going to touch on Neuralink? But I think we should talk about that next time. Maybe give more than a couple minutes. I mean,
The cool thumbnail. We'll have to reuse it next week.
yeah, the cool thumbnail with the Neuralink. That was really cool. I like
That
that.
was an interesting presentation. But yeah, let's since we've gone on so long, let's go to Q&A, I think.
Yeah, let's have Alec queue up some questions here from Bob Adams. I almost called him Boba Dams. From Bob Adams 1414 on Twitter. What do you estimate the probability of Tesla 2023 delivery growth being only 30% or less in a bad recession type scenario? Yeah, I had mentioned this on Dave Lee's chat on over the weekend that, what if, like kind of a doomsday scenario for Tesla stock is like, what if the recession is worse globally than we think and that they only grow 30% globally year over year? Maybe in the US they're growing 50%, but in China it's a lot less. In Europe it's less because just a global recession is bigger. And so what if like Tesla's stock is what happens to Tesla's stock if they're not growing 50% per year in total revenue, for example? And so Tesla is not a growth stock really anymore. It's sort of on the fringe of a growth stock and value stock almost. And so it's going to have a whole different lens to look at it, I think. So um, I'm not sure what's going to happen to the stock price when that happens, but it obviously won't be as good as if it was still growing 50%, year over year. But I guess the probability of this type of global recession hitting Tesla hard, and this also assumes that FSD adoption doesn't take off because the FSD technology doesn't accelerate as fast as it could potentially. Because if that FSD technology accelerates like really strongly from here with the single stack version 11 and beyond, then I think even if we're in a global recession, all kinds of fleets and all kinds of businesses are going to want to buy up a bunch of Teslas to start using it for their delivery businesses or whatever, just even for level 4 implementation before level 5 is legalized in their jurisdiction or whatnot. So I think that demand will not be a problem whatsoever if FSD accelerates the technology. But if it doesn't, if it's we're stuck at kind of like where we are now with FSD, and it's still really good, advanced driver assistance, but it's not quite level 4 or level 5, then and there's a global recession that hits demand globally hard, I think the odds of that is probably 25%. I don't know. There's a long way to say 25%. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that seems about right to me. I'd probably take the under on it. Maybe I'd go 15-20%.
Yeah.
But it's certainly possible. Yeah, but my sense is like the IRA though is going to be a huge incentive, at least here in the United States. So then I think the question becomes, can they meet the increased demand, or can they get enough increased demand out of Europe, China, rest of world to kind of continue to grow at 30%? Because even 30%, like, I don't think that's out of growth stock territory at all. I think you probably warrants a slightly lower multiple, but like it's already trading at a peg less than 1. So like a lower multiple than I would apply otherwise, but in my mind, it's still kind of higher. The implied valuation is probably still higher than where they are today, at least assuming that their margins don't get absolutely crushed. I mean, if they have to, the big question in my mind is, do they have to cut prices like 20% in order to grow at 30-40%? In that
Mhm.
situation, that's like really bad news. I
Yeah.
don't think they do that, and I think they would probably just slow unit growth while maintaining 25% ish gross margins,
Mhm.
and continue to have really strong operating leverage and kind of
See,
wait
I
for the economy
disagree
to turn
there.
around.
I don't think they
Okay,
slowly improve. I would just disagree with that point, and it's good. I try to look for points where I disagree with you because otherwise we're just agreeing with it.
it's
I
good. Yeah.
disagree. Yeah, I disagree. They slow unit growth. I think they push out unit growth and lower prices. Worst case,
Hmm.
and as long as they're not losing money, because I think Elon
Yeah.
sees the future revenue of all these cars turning into autonomous robots that drive around being huge revenue. And why would he limit? Why would he want to limit the number of those on the road, now by doing that. That's what I think. That's the way I think he would think about it. But I don't know. I mean, that's just my guesstimate.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely the way that he has portrayed this trade-off in the past. Is that, yeah, you definitely want to prioritize volume growth, because like the big picture of like 20 million units a year, that doesn't change based on a recession in 23 and 24. So I
Mhm.
think you're right that like the long term view, yeah, that's right. But I don't know. I mean, I think there comes a point where even if that's your mission and your goal, like depending on how low demand is, you can't, like, you don't want to be approaching 10 or 5% gross margins. So
Mhm.
there probably is some point at which, depending on the price elasticity of demand, I think
Yeah.
that would probably dictate it to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also know that they study like proximity of where they make deliveries, and they've been able to find, or they've talked about this in the past, where when they make deliveries to a new area, it spurs demand in that area substantially. So they probably have some kind of like, they can probably measure what the saturation of different areas are. And if they feel they're getting saturated in Northern California with demand, for example, because there's so many Teslas already here, they know like where their saturation point of demand is at other places in the US, maybe, or they can guess that. But I feel like they're a long ways from that. And there's still new regions they have hardly any deliveries to, I feel like, in the world. So
Yeah.
maybe like South America, or there's other places they could bring Teslas to,
Yeah,
and
like
so
I saw just this week, I think it was, that the first deliveries of the Model Y in Taiwan happened, and I was like, really? Taiwan didn't
yeah,
have them before?
yeah,
But like you still, like, I think Singapore was a month or two ago, so like there's still, I mean, these are small markets, obviously, but
yeah,
it still is a valid point that like, they have not been fully saturated, like you're saying, anywhere yet.
yeah, yeah. All right, next question from Brave. And Brave, I saw a good comment when we were talking about the homework and teachers, and that you said that teachers will have AI to detect chatbot generated reports, as a solution to that. So that's interesting. That could happen too. So Brave has a question in the YouTube comments here. Instead of cutting production in China, why Tesla would not start advertising to prop up demand in China, Europe, and North America? So that's what I think too. I think that's like one of the final demand levers that Elon knows he can pull is advertising. And I think the way to think about it, he hates advertising. I think most of many people do. I hate advertising. My old boss, Mr. Petterfield, Rick Rose, hates advertising. The concept of it, because why should you trick if you have such a good value proposition? Why do you need to trick people or persuade people? Really, I guess the way to think about advertising is like informing or educating. So if he wants to advertise or educate the public about how efficient Tesla cars are versus other EVs, for example, like
Yeah.
he might do something like that.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think like that is probably going to be a much higher ROI, decision, to advertise a little bit than cutting prices just across the board.
Yeah.
And I really think like this is such a unique product that the advertising could be done in a really interesting way. I just think back in like the mid 2000s when Apple was doing all this advertising around like I'm a Mac and I'm a PC, or like those iPod commercials that they used to have with like music and the people dancing and the colored screen.
Yeah.
Like those
Yeah.
those were iconic commercials, and it was
Yeah.
like it's such an inflection point of like that technology really being like drastically better than everything else. And
Yeah.
so to me, it just seems like a similar sort of thing here where I don't know if Tesla would do it, but I can imagine if they do start to do some advertising, it'll be really interesting, unique advertising that like it's not going to be like what Lincoln does, where they just have like Matthew McConaughey and like a fancy looking house, like getting into his Lincoln, like this is the height of luxury, like just dumb advertising like that. They're not going to do it. It'll be really cool. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I'm okay with it too. From Andrew Bazile, question: how much longer do you think before Tesla shows a smaller, cheaper vehicle and starts taking reservations? Potentially important and a possible stock catalyst. I don't think it would be a big stock catalyst immediately, unless they showed like after the first weekend, like we got 10 million reservations of this new car in the first 48 hours, maybe something like that could be a stock catalyst. But other than that, if they just kind of like showcase a smaller, cheaper vehicle and take reservations behind the scenes, but don't really like, I think there'll be excitement, but I couldn't see, if it was a complete surprise and just like out of the blue, like and one more thing, like discussion at the Tesla semi event, for example, and no one was expecting it, then maybe the stock pops like 5% or 10%. But in this macro environment, it's hard to see anything as a stock catalyst in this kind of macro environment we're in, because I feel like anything that's like positive individualistically for the stock gets like fainted away really quickly with the macro market decline, the next day or the few days later when Powell reiterates raising rates and the whole market's down 3%, whatever the catalyst was, now the stock is just flat or something in that case. So, I'm not focused on the individualistic stock catalysts like that. I think it's really going to be fundamentals going forward. And the fundamentals is like the revenue and the bottom line growth, that Matt does so good at, like, modeling and such. So Matt, do you want to, I guess, what do you think? Do you think a smaller, cheaper vehicle would be what do you think?
I think if like they announced it on like the Q1 call or something like that, I think that actually could be a catalyst, but I don't think they will. I think they're trying to roll like the robo taxi and the $25,000 car into the same vehicle. Like to me, that just kind of makes sense. Is you want your kind of mass transit robo taxi, like you're changing the whole economics of what it means to transport, and doing so on the lowest fully amortized cost per mile possible. Like that to me, that's just is like that's the end goal. That's where like the real money is going to be made. And so to me, I don't think they're going to sell like a $25,000 version of the Model 3 and then introduce the robo taxi, because like you'll just Osborne whatever that $25,000 car is whenever the robo taxi comes out. So to me, they're probably the same thing. And I think about what Franz said, that like he's most excited about this new one that he's working on. I don't know if you saw that in his like Peterson museum interview thing that he did.
I'm very curious about that. Yeah.
So to me, I think that's what it's going to be. And I think we're probably a year at least away from them revealing that, because like the FSD is just not there yet. So you can't, like, if they unveiled it today, for example, and said like, this is our robotaxi and we're going to launch in 2024, like the market's going to give them no credit for that. They're like, like that's not going to, you're not going to be autonomous by the time
Yeah.
that comes out, just based on the current state of FSD beta.
Yeah.
So I think it might be a little bit longer than some people might be thinking.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more question, maybe. We're at the hour time frame. From Evan Glansman, do you think we hear anything about a new factory or the next generation platform before the end of the year? I don't think so. I think we've gotten all the major news between now and the end of the year. I think the next kind of announcement we could expect might be Q1 earnings in January. That's my guess. I mean, Elon could leak something out on Twitter. Who knows? But I think in terms of Tesla, the Tesla world, I think there's no major announcements between now and the end of the year. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think given how significant the demand concerns are in the market right now, and like that, the way that narrative is kind of shaping everything, I don't think the market would actually behave or would reward Tesla if they did make an announcement like that.
Yeah.
So, unless Tesla was able to come out and say, look, we've got, 400,000 unfilled orders or something like that, which they clearly don't have. Otherwise, we'd be seeing that in the data. So to me, it just makes sense to hold off on announcing any sort of new factories right now until we kind of get a little bit more clarity on where the economy is heading and, a little bit more of a kind of demand buffer than what we have right now.
Yeah. And I see one last question. I saw lots of great comments in the YouTube comments. One day, maybe the Twitter spaces will have like streaming tweets conversation that you can easily look at too. Right now, it's a little difficult to look at the tweets in the Twitter spaces. But I see a YouTube comment from Mike saying, are your kids still super engaged excited with Roblox? That's sort of anecdotally. And does that change your investment thesis? Yeah, my kids play Roblox like crazy. I test it out with them sometimes and it's getting better. Like the experience itself is better and better. They still watch like YouTube channels of people playing Roblox. There's like this new game called Doors. That's like one of the most popular games on there. They're playing. It's like every few weeks, there's like a new major hit game that is like added to their repertoire. That's like really impressive, done by a big studio. My thesis on Roblox is still pretty strong. I just don't see that, I'm looking for signs of that trend. I talk about the trend, right? Is it a fad or a trend, right? A fad is short-lived and kind of dies down. A trend continues going forward, like the EV trend, So for me, Roblox is a trend of a younger generation of kids being immersive socially on the internet, and so it's not just games, all kinds of experiences, immersive experiences online there, social experiences. And so I just don't see that trend. I'm looking for data to see that trend die down. But whenever I see the Roblox daily engagement hours, and although they're reported on the 15th now of every, so I'm looking forward to December 15th, what they report for November. So on the 15th of every month going forward, they're reporting, and all the noise of previous COVID spikes is mostly cleared out. So now we can kind of more definitively see the trend, I think. And so the next, if I see 2 or 3 months of like a sort of a downtrend, then I'd be a little worried. But if there's just a seasonal month down and for some reason a month was down versus another, I'm not as worried. It's like, I just see that trend continuing from all the data that they've been putting out month over month. Now, when do they really monetize on it? Is another question. There's lots of ways they can monetize. They're starting this immersive advertising stuff. And so we'll see how that plays out in 2023. So there's lots of ways they can monetize more than they already do. And I think that's on the list of Dave Baszucki, the founder, his things to do. But he's got his own vision. He's a founder. He owns a big chunk of the company still. So I like that as well, that he's not trying to monetize everything all at once. So for the big picture, long term, I like that trend capability.
And are your kids still doing some programming or like game development on there too?
Yeah, my kids are still, one of my kids is really into it. The other 2 kids are off and on. But they all have, they all do like coding lessons, with for Roblox, their language is LUA, and they're learning coding. They're coding their own little worlds and showing it to their friends, and they've got some really cool ideas. It's really neat for the future. I feel like for kids to learn how to code early. I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great skill set.
Yeah. So anyway, and all my friends, all their friends are still playing like crazy. I talk to other parents, and their kids all love Roblox. So I don't see, a whole lot of people going away from Roblox. Minecraft is not as big as it used to. It's still big, Minecraft, but I feel like Roblox is kind of taken the reins away from Minecraft in a lot of ways. And not that Minecraft isn't big anymore; it's just not as big. And my kids aren't old enough to really play Fortnite, so that's a big thing too, apparently. So Epic
Yeah.
Games is something to watch too, but that's not publicly traded.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's good. We'll talk next week, Matt, and good chatting with you this week. And next week is episode 76. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.